So I gave a speech there at the Orlando Stake Center about Islam and Mormonism. Well, the enterprising public affairs director for that stake invited the imam of the mosque, which was just about 2 miles down the same road, to come to that gathering. And he came, and he brought about 50 of the members of his mosque with him. It was the first time they'd ever been in an LDS church, and he told me afterwards that the previous Sunday, he normally held a Quran class on Sunday evenings. He had told his Quran class, "I'm not going to be here next week. I'm going to a Mormon church service. Any of you who want to come, you can come with me." Well, they all found that very bizarre, but they decided to come, and we had a great time. I mean, after my talk was finished, there were lots of questions. A lot of them centered on, well, what do Muslims think about this? How do they do this? And well, we had the imam sitting on the stand right behind me. I thought, this is absurd for me to be answering these questions. You know, have the imam stand up. And so he took questions and answers and went over very well. He apparently enjoyed it quite a bit, because several months after that, I got a note from him by email asking me. He said, "We have an annual conference on the Prophet Muhammad for the Muslims of Central Florida. Would you be willing to come out and be our keynote speaker?" Now, I just thought that was too amazing to pass up, to have a Mormon keynote speaker at a conference on Muhammad. So I really struggled with the talk that I was going to give there, because I wanted to say something that would be pleasing to him and to the Muslim community that had invited me, but also true to my own background. And I finally talked about the kind of society that Muhammad's mission occurred within. A society in which it's called in Arabic tradition the Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance, which can also be translated as something like an age of coarseness or crudeness or something like that. And it was a time when people basically paid no attention to God, as far as we can tell. It was a kind of tribal humanism, some people have called it, but that's to give it too positive a spin. It was all about how much you could accumulate and the honor you could gain in this life, because there's no life after death, at least none to be worried about. You're not accountable for anything at the judgment. It's whatever you can do in this life and get away with, in a sense. And the argument I made was that we are in a culture that is not so very different from that. You see the joking bumper stickers, "He who dies with the most toys wins." But there are a lot of people who really seem to believe that's all there is, that's all there can be. And so you just accumulate and have a good time, and then, you die and there's probably nothing there. It's a kind of new age of Jahiliyyah. And so I said that we Christians and Muslims, Latter-day Saints and Muslims, ought to be making common cause against the enemy that's without the walls. And I quoted Martin Luther, of all people. I don't think he lived by this advice all the time, but he did say at one point that we're like people guarding a city. And outside the city are the forces of death and sin and so on and so forth. And we should be shouting encouragement to one another on the walls as the enemy advances against us, rather than, as I would put it, shooting one another in the back. Because we've got big problems out there, and we can make common cause, and we ought to be making common cause together. So one of the things that pleased me most about this was that both the stake president of that Orlando stake of the church and the imam of the mosque immediately began to talk about ways that they could work together after this event, after the two events. A lot of Latter-day Saints came to that conference on Muhammad too. I mean, it was a wonderful night. We had about 1,000 people there, most of whom were Muslims, but 100 or so were Latter-day Saints. And I hoped it was profitable for both sides. But they were talking about doing joint humanitarian work and working together in the community, doing charitable work together. Now that's what I really like, and I think a few hours of charitable work side by side are worth hundreds of hours of theoretical dialogue. Much as I appreciate theoretical dialogue, and I'm much better at it than I am at practical work. But that's what I want to see come out of things like that, is have us work together and get to know one another as human beings who have fundamentally similar, if not identical, values, and care about our children, care about the society they're going to be raised in or going to raise their children in. There's so much that we can do together, and meanwhile, we have serious critics of religion outside the theistic community who point to religion and say, look, some of our friends like Christopher Hitchens and so on, religion is the source of all the evils in the world. Do away with religion, we'd be living in some sort of utopia, which is historical nonsense, obviously. But the fact is, we religious people have given enough rope to our critics that they can make a good stab at, that's not a good metaphor, good stab at hanging us. Oh, anyway. But there have been a lot of bad things that have been done in the name of religion, and it's the duty, it seems to me, of theists, not only because we ought to be doing good things anyway, but for the sake of the things we believe in, to be showing that religious people are not a blight on society. We can work together. We can do good. We can be a force, maybe the greatest force for good among humanity. Historically, I think we theists have been, but that's a challenge, and to the extent that we have not lived up to our callings, which many of us have not done, and all of us failed to do at various times. We have brought disgrace on the things that we believe in most. And I know the Book of Mormon was quoted earlier, Alma to his son Corianton, the things you do speak so loudly that they won't believe the things I say. So theism, when the theists are not living up to their commitments, is discredited.